So we haven't done that. We didn't write it in here. We need to write our get. So like I said, you take the sort of the baby steps, try to do one thing at a time. So now we should test the code we just wrote, and we could write a real test, and maybe for a real project you'd want to do that. You'd want to write a unit test and go, whatever underscore test. But we can test it with JavaScript. And so we can just make the call, right? And I'm just going to copy. That. So this will be get /todo.json, and we're not going to send it anything. So, okay, what do I write here? So,
before the send, just in case it goes so fast. Unlikely, but in theory.
Well, in JavaScript it can't happen, pretty sure. Does anybody know the reason why?
What's the question?
It's single threaded.
It's single threaded. So it has to run all of this code before it does the, anyway. Incidentally, you can make that behavior different. You can make Ajax SJAX for synchronous, and then it will wait. Don't ever do that, but you can. The reason you don't do that is it locks up the browser, and the browser just like feels frozen while it's making this request.
So just stop on line 128.
Yeah, and wait till it's done. I've seen people do it because they want that behavior. They want to be able to on the next line get the data or whatever. Bad idea. Don't do that. Okay, and so let's just, actually, we don't even have to log it. I can just say render items, as we already wrote that, and give it the result. Because I'm returning an array, that's going to render the array. So all I need to do is just run get items here.
And make sure your test render items is removed too.
Yeah, I got rid of that. So I think, let's see if it made the request. What is all this stuff? Fonts. There it is, to-do-JSON. Sorry, it's really small. I think it did, because the response here is just the empty. So it didn't render anything because it was an empty list, right? But I think it is running it, so that's progress.
So where's the render items? That's a function we wrote?
Yeah, we just wrote that up here.
It's that one. Okay.
And that's why I broke it into separate functions. It makes it really easy to think about, right? So, okay. So I think the next step is probably to create one. Okay. So we have the ability. We've done the HTML on the front end, and we've gotten to-dos back, but we haven't created any. So maybe we should create one. How do we do that? So first of all, this is a post from the browser. So what's the first step here?
You're receiving the JSON.
Yeah, so I think what we have to do is do something like this. So I'm going to make a struct, and now I'm going to fill it. And the way you fill it using JSON, you say decoder, append it the request body, and then say decoder. Now this error is actually far more likely to occur. I probably wouldn't return 500, but I'm just going to leave it that way. Does anybody know why this error is far more likely to occur?
User said
nothing.
Yeah, people will submit garbage data. So, in this case, I maybe could have skipped the error because it's unlikely, but in this case, the error is very likely because people will just post garbage. And in fact, scripts are crawling the internet every day, just trying out things. And so you should expect to get garbage here. So it's good to check that error because it may not be a to-do that was posted.
64 before your to-do needs to be the type.
Yeah, it should be capital, sorry.
Sorry. Okay.
So we got our to do, and now we want to insert it into the data store. How are we going to do that? Let's go to the docs.
New complete key.
Ah, good. We need a key. So does it return? I think it does return. No, it's just a key.
Email.
No, the kind is to do,
Sorry.
and then the other thing is no. Okay, so we create a key, and this key we will pass to put.
Don't we need on the key the either it's a 0 or it's a string?
No, we created an incomplete key, and it does that for us. It's actually the empty string is 0, which means generate key. It will generate an integer key. So we'll do put, and that returns a key and an error, and this is where we actually can use the key. Because now we'll have the key of. So this key is like this key, except it has the ID filled in for us. Because when we do a put, it's going to create an ID, and then it'll return it here. So we can get the ID out of here, is what I'm saying. Everybody follow that? So like I said, it's like this key, except it has the ID assigned.
The key's been completed.
Now it's a complete key, yeah, not an incomplete key. After I do a put, assuming there's no error, right? And so we should check the error here. Error. Okay, so I put it into the data store. What should I do now?
Return list of correct to-dos.
Yeah, we could do that. We could return the newest. I think probably what we'll do is just return this to do. You know, if I post, I expect to get back the thing created. But yeah, we could have returned a list. Okay, so JSON.new encoder response .encode to do. Yeah. Okay, so I think that will create a to-do. Okay, so we, you know, if we wanted, we could.
So the user, so the user sends us the to-do, line 64 through 71, and we add it to the data store, 72, 79, and then we send the data straight back to them if they send it.
Yep, so I think there's one thing missing here. Just fill in the ID,
There you go.
and then they'll have an ID available. Okay, I think there's some issue here. This is wrong, right? It should be todo.json. But otherwise, I think, I mean, assuming it was right before, this should work, right? There is an issue here. What did I forget to do? So I created the to-do here, and I'm decoding it. If you look at this, all it has is text. So what I'm missing here is I'm not assigning the email. And that's super critical. So you would not assign the email in the JavaScript. You assign the email here.
so you don't want to have to ask the user for the email after they logged in, right?
You can't trust the user because they could enter anybody's email address, right? And so we have to get it from the context so we know this is the logged in user email. This way you can't create a to-do item for somebody else. So that's a subtlety. And while we're at it, you also want to do, I'll show you how to get rid of it, the ID from the, because right now it's going to store the ID inside of the data store. And what we probably want to do is make it ignore the ID field. And we fill the ID from the key, right? That's where we're doing this. But right now it'll actually store it as a field. So we're going to want to get rid of that. But for now, this will work. But at least we made it so you can't overwrite somebody's to-do list. Okay, let's see what happens if we go to this. Okay. I got a 500. Invalid entity type. Oh, I had this problem before.
Pointer.
Pointer. It has to be a pointer. This is funny that I had that. I now know what that error means. Try it again. Here we go. Cool. That's kind of hard to read, but so it created it. See, we get a really big number, and there's the email and there's the text. So it filled in the text from whatever we entered, and the rest it did for us. So it should have created it in the data store, right? So we can test that by looking at 8,000. Looking at the data store viewer, and I have a bunch of garbage in here now, but so there's our editor. See how it created that ID? We're probably going to get rid of that, but for now this is okay. So everybody following how we did this? Does it all make sense? Okay. So we've added it. I noticed something wrong with this.
I got a question for you there on the previous page. Is that, sorry, I could ask that. It sounds like you're on the thought train. Want to finish that?
No, I mean, what was the question?
You added on the code your email in a different place than your ID. So you do the ID because that's when you have the ID on the go code. Yeah, so the 81 you add the ID because you got your ID back. But why do you add the email on 72? Because you want to pass that into the data store. Okay.
Yep.
Got it. Never mind.
So, I mean, while we're here, I can look at the, I think it's described in here. This is what we want. Okay, see this little magical bit of code here? Remember tags? I talked about this with Jason. You could rename a field using a tag. So here's your struct. You have your name of the field, your type, and then you have a tag. Tag is just a string. And we have before Jason colon, and you can rename it. What we're going to use is data store colon, and then in quotes, dash. I think it's dash. And I think that will be ignored. It's either that or this one. Yeah, I is ignored entirely by the data store. So that's what we want, okay? So in other words, we don't want to store the ID. And so now it won't, it's as if that field didn't exist when it tries to save it. And the reason we do that is because we'll get the ID from the key. So we don't need to store it in the data store, okay? So let me delete this. So I removed the one we created, and now I create it again. That's not the right. So now you see there's no, this ID is the ID in data store, but the field ID is gone. And that's what we want, okay?
That's cool.
So that's a trick if you have properties that are like computed, properties that are not saved, that's how you can do it. Okay, so,
Is there a way to do so with JSON as well? Because you
Yeah.
don't necessarily want to send the email over the wire.
yeah, very similar, you could do with JSON too. And you can do both. You can say, you know, ID or whatever. And that's why they have the prefix of the thing here. It used to be a simpler format, But then they realized that you might want to use the same struct for data store, for JSON, for XML, and so you can have different tags for all of them. And just so you know, if that doesn't give you enough power, like you're like, well, I want something really complicated in here, you don't have to do it that way. You can use this property load saver and completely do custom. And so instead of like doing the marshalling, unmarshalling, it'll call this guy. And whatever you return is what will be marshaled. So you can just do something completely custom if you want. But that's pretty complicated, and we don't need to do that, so I'm just going to show you this way. So the issue with this code was it did add it, but we didn't redraw. So you didn't see it, okay? Right? If I go here, I don't see it, but I think if I refresh, it shows up. And so that's if I add test 2, click plus, I'd like some indication that something happened. I don't want to have to click refresh. So we can add that, right, really easily by using the same onReady state change. Except instead of doing this, we could sort of do one of two things. We could get the one item, have a list of items we're saving somewhere and push it, and then redraw. Or the easier way, just call get items. So essentially we just redraw the whole page. So that's probably the easiest way. So now if I run this, it still didn't work.
Would that be because of eventual consistency? So when it went to get items that new
Maybe.
rows haven't been in there yet, needs to replicate, takes a little moment.
It
There
could
is,
be.
right?
Yeah, I've seen it work both ways.
But this is the dev server,
Yeah,
there's no eventual.
that's what I mean. It should probably just work. But no, we're seeing the behavior where it takes a second. And maybe to prove that out, if that's the truth, we can just we can here set timeout for a second and see if it fixes it. Let's get rid of some of these. Wait, we never implemented delete. We'll get rid of it in a second. That's a very, very bad way to solve this problem, but it does work.
I like it.
I didn't have to do that on my code, so I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I think maybe the dev server is like simulating the eventual. I don't know. And so I think what we can do instead is we can keep around a global variable, current items. And we can set it here. And then down here, we can say push, and then the thing we just got back. And then we don't have to do another call. Does everybody follow that? So we'll just save the list, and this probably should work. Yeah. So that saves us one get to the server. The downside is if you had added another item from some other place, it wouldn't show up. But it's a to-do list, who cares? We don't have to support that kind of one user at a time is fine. Okay, so what's missing here is delete. We haven't implemented delete. So we added the delete here, I think, and it's making the call. It just doesn't do anything. Right. So I think instead of sending it as JSON, like this, we need to send it as part of the query string. So it made the delete thing, but of course it didn't actually do anything because we haven't implemented. So how are we going to do this?
Receive the JSON.
Yeah, but this time it's not sending
Oh,
JSON.
URL.
Yeah, so it's like,
Get interact.
Get params, URL.
Request dot request dot path.
it's
Is it
Form
form
value.
value or is it request or is
because
it query?
it'll do both. Form value will do either, so it'll get it.
Now, why parse in as opposed to A to I?
Well, we want an int64 because that's what is up here.
And an A to I gives you what?
An int.
Okay.
It just so happens that most computers will be the same, but I just would rather avoid having to do the cast. So, just use parse int instead. So instead of checking an error, what I'm going to do is say is if I d 0, then you know I'm going to HTTP error. I don't know. Not found. So that could happen if they send in bad data or they didn't put an ID or they, whatever. We'll just do not found if that happens. So now we have an ID and we want to delete it, okay? And so if we go look at the docs, the way we can do that, where's delete? Delete. Got to create a key. And so now we can create a regular key, right? I think it's a new key. CTX. Forget what it takes. I think the kind. Yeah, the kind, the string ID. Kind is to do. String ID is empty, and now we put the ID and no. Okay. And then we'll say and then if there is not null. So let's see, I'm missing something on parsing. The base 10. Got the base. And then obviously can't return anything.
Context.
Context. How do we do it? Cool. So let's see if that works. There's a major problem with this code, but let's just see if it works. So if I refresh.
Yeah.
Cool, it does seem to delete them. So we have two problems. First problem is this isn't causing the thing to refresh. So let's do that. We could try to find it in the list. I'm just going to call it get items, but that was probably going to have the same issue with the timing. Let's see. Yep. We're going to look at that more to see why it's having that problem. Because I think it's not supposed to. So
It's not having that problem on my
there we
code base.
go. Okay, so that's the first problem, was that it wasn't refreshing. So now it refreshes. What's the second problem?
You can delete any.
Exactly.
Video and the
I could just
system.
guess an ID and say delete it, and it would delete another user's to do. Now that's unlikely because the IDs are hard to guess, but it's still a problem, and it's one we can fix. Okay. Though fixing it may be a little tricky. Because we're not doing a query.
Or get. You got the key. You can just do a plain get instead of query.
Yeah. Okay. Stop correcting me. Start again. CTX key. No. that what it takes? Take something else. That's what it takes. They're getting to do, and then we respond with whatever, 500. Okay, and then we check if to-do.email not equal to-do.email, then probably, what's the status code for not allowed, unauthorized
402, maybe?
They should have
payment
a-
required, 401.
You must pay me before you do this.
And we'll say access denied.
I don't remember what they call it, but whatever they use for the,
There is the famous, I'm a little teapot.
no, but the data store, whatever they use to work with consistency,
Uh-huh.
what do they call the,
Yeah, they have eventual consistency and strong.
yeah, but what do they call the partitions that if you put it into?
Yeah, so if you use an ancestor, then
Yeah, right,
operations
ancestor.
involving the
So
ancestor
if
is
you send
strong.
an email as an ancestor.
And that was what I was going to get to next here, is that instead of using a field, now this is perfectly valid, it works. Instead of using a field, we could have created like a profile or a user account and used that as the ancestor to our key, guy we can send email as. And that would have made this a little easier because then it would have been impossible to retrieve the to-do item unless the ancestor matched. And so I think this may be a case where the ancestor would be a nice,
And that also means that
the query symbol
the
too.
consistency,
Yeah, and maybe the consistency would be
because
fixed. Yeah.
there's no eventual consistency of the same ancestor.
Yeah. But this works too. So everybody following what we're doing here? So we're doing a simple delete, but we had to add this check just because we didn't want people to delete other people's stuff. But otherwise, and right, and we have the same check on the get because we have it in the filter. And we have the same check on the post because we fill in the email for them. And so it is something when you're writing apps like this that it can be easy to make it, but you forget about the authorization stuff. And so that can be a little tricky when you're working with users, is to make sure that users are only allowed to do what they're supposed to do. Just something to remind yourself of. Yeah, because it's hard to test sometimes because you just have to remember, oh yeah, I should try this as a different user or whatever and see if I can do it. Okay, so let's see if all this works now. We can add, we can remove. Everybody following?
Be awesome.
I think we built a basic to-do app. Any questions about this app?
On line 90 of the Go code, I didn't quite catch what you were doing there with parsnif. It's 2 base 64. Is that what 64 is?
No, to a 64-bit integer in base 10, and then the form value is the query string.
So you're receiving a 64-bit integer in base 10.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that just means that we have 64 zeros and ones, and it's using our normal decimal numbering system.
That's right.
to encode it.
Because that's how they're coming through.
Yeah.
You know, if we look at the URL here for the delete, it's just a number.
Yeah.
And the 64-bit is probably more, I suspect is bigger than 32-bit, but maybe it's not. That's a big number. So the 64-bit, you do need it to be full. Just guessing. I think that's bigger than, was it 4 billion or whatever? Or 2 billion because it's signed.
I think it's 64-bit.
Yeah. So, but otherwise, pretty straightforward, right? Everybody follow? Okay. I will commit that.
You'll push that. I'd
Yep.
like to copy that down and look at it tonight. Thank you. That was an awesome example, Caleb. Thank you very much. Yeah. You got any more, Caleb, or we're ready?